strange premise, and it's hard to tell who the good guys are and who the bad guys are. But it's kind of spy versus spy. So if you're into that, it could be worth a watch. And it also starts with the two people right at the beginning of the first episode don't actually know what's going on or necessarily who they are, which is kind of cool. And over the progression of the first season, you get to understand why they don't know who they are. It's a bit like there's a sci-fi show on, I can't remember whether it was Prime or Netflix, called Dark Matter. And literally the first episode, you start off, there's 6 people on a spaceship, don't know who they are, don't know who anyone else is, don't know how they got there. And the adventure starts there. Kind of an interesting, that was kind of a fun show. It kind of ended too soon. It was one of those that was starting to get into its stride, and you were beginning to find out why nobody knew who they were, what they were doing, or why they were there in the first episode. You were sort of getting to the bottom of that mystery, but unfortunately it got cancelled, so we'll never know. At least with, what was it, the other show I watched, The Expanse. The Expanse is a series of books, from what I understand, a series of books. And, humanity is spread around our solar system. You have the Belters live in the asteroid belts doing mining. You have the folks who live on Mars and the folks who live on Earth, and there's like 3 factions who are always there is no trust between any of them, and it's all an interesting mess, and there's other things going on outside of the political intrigue. And so the book was written, there is a series of books that run one after another. And then there's a break. And then another book was written for the universe, the established universe of The Expanse. But it's 20, 30 years after the original story. So they got to the end of that first series of books and said, okay, we're done. We've told the story as far as it needs to go. And of course, fans of the books have sort of said, oh, but what about the other 3 books, I think it is? And it's like, well, the problem with the other 3 books is they don't involve any of the characters who were in the first series of books, because it's 20, 30 years later and those characters are now not major players in the universe. And that can sometimes be a problem for TV shows, because TV shows like to have continuity of characters and actors. Lord of the Rings was a good representation of the stories that Tolkien wrote concerning the series Lord of the Rings. They then have The Hobbit. The Hobbit was a prequel to Lord of the Rings. And in Lord of the Rings, Bilbo Baggins was very old and effectively looking to retire from just living in the Shire. He wanted to go and live with the elves and just retire. He didn't want the hassles of all the family squabbles and everything else. And so Frodo took up the mantle at that point. And that's where we were in Lord of the Rings. So Bilbo's an old hobbit and he's retired. But the Hobbit book is Bilbo as a youngster. We've also got a bunch of dwarves, which didn't appear in Lord of the Rings. We have elves that didn't appear in the Lord of the Rings. And so they still had, what was it, Legolas, played by, the pretty blonde guy who was in the show with Johnny Depp and Pirates. He was, what is his name? I can't remember what his name is, but he was... he was in The Hobbit, and no, he was never in The Hobbit. His character came in for Lord of the Rings, and that's the first and last time we saw him. Oh, block the user, bye-bye. And you're gone. So yeah, it's kind of like, well, because we introduced this character in one place, he's got to keep turning up from there onwards, even if he was never in the story of the book that we're basing this on. So I think that's the people who are producing The Expanse have that problem of, the characters have died. Do we really want to try and include them artificially in a later story? So I don't know. It's kind of the problem with a story that falls over generations. Having guests from related, I mean, they do it for NCIS. You've got LL Cool J's visited the NCIS team in Washington. He was part of the NCIS LA series, and they brought back his character to be on the flagship show. Now, people who've watched that universe, the universe that NCIS is in started in a series called Jag, and one of the actresses who was in Jag got a part in NCIS New Orleans, but she wasn't playing the same character. It was just the actress that was being used. I thought it was a little bit of a shame that they didn't use her as the character who had been in Jag all those years before, because that can be kind of fun. It's sort of, where are they now? What are they doing? They've had Catherine Bell and what's his face, who played Harm from Jag, have made very late cameo appearances, and Bud. On NCIS. So NCIS spun off from Jag during third or fourth season, possibly. And Jag ended after season 7, 8, 9, something like that. But we have seen some of the characters who were established in Jag turn up in NCIS in season 10, 11, 12. And obviously the NCIS team know them from, because they had dealings with Jag. So you know, those are characters they've met and dealt with before. So they turn up, and if you never watch Jag, you know it would be so, oh Bud, how you doing? How's the babies? And it's like, well, we obviously know who this is, but if you didn't watch Jag, you won't know the details of Bud's whole life story up until that point. And all we're establishing in NCIS is a catch-up of what have you been doing for the last 10 years that your show hasn't been on air. I like things like that. It sort of respects the story and respects the characters. That, you know, you watched a show and you build, you know, you get invested in the people in the show. And then the show gets cancelled, and to have those characters turn up in a sister show is kind of fun. Because, you know, oh yeah, I invested in those people, and how are they doing? Anyway, this is chewing up our liquid fertilizer. Unfortunately, I didn't have enough digestate to throw out on these fields. Corn is a good field to throw manure out on, or digestate, or slurry, because it does need so much. I mean, we're talking, what, 150, 160 kilos per hectare of nitrogen. And if I can bump up the levels of nitrogen in the field using natural cow byproducts to 100, that almost halves the amount of liquid fertilizer I'm going to spend money on. But I didn't do that this year. I did put out some nitrogen or some digestate out on the cotton fields, but I can only push those up to about 60, 70, because they top out at 100, and you don't want to get too close to the ideal requirement, because then if you go over, it's as bad as being under. Plants go, ugh, too much nitrogen in the soil, we're not going to grow well. But corn, it's very low risk of putting too much nitrogen in there. But also, you go through so much of the digestate and manure and stuff. That's the other problem. Is yeah. If I'm trying to boost this field up to 100, I'm probably going to use about 100,000 litres of digestate. That's 3 tank loads, at least 3 tank loads, which is quite a you know, that's a lot of transporting and a lot of oversight I have to do to get the jobs done. Estimated well for this, and may have just enough to finish this field up. But now that there's crop on the field, I don't really want to be throwing manure on it, because that's not nice. Hey, here's your fresh corn with manure byproducts all over it. No. I mean, You do it in May, it's probably all going to get washed off before harvest. Anyway, we have done that field. We'll now turn off the thing. I could... Okay. Let's drive back to the yard. Just occurred to me. Okay, so we got the hoe out in the massive field behind the New Holland. But I do have a weeder. And... Ooh, mind the doggy. If the weeder is, I believe, a lower horsepower piece of equipment, if some of these fields only need a weeder, I could put that behind either the Fendt or the Vestrum and go weed off the fields that are less. Let's have a look at that as a theory. That's a thing, that's a thing. Problem is I don't know. That looks like a thing. That looks like a weeder. And that is a weeder, 170 horsepower. So I would have to put that behind the... okay, let's... Pneumatic Start Pro. No, yes, Pneumatic Start Pro. I would have to put that behind the Case Magnum. Also, not sure if I have any fields that would work for. Weeders. Pneumatic Start Pro. That's a weed at 170 horse. Okay, so we would have to use the Magnum, but let's go have a look at our fields and see. Visit. This has small weeds. This might work, you know. That can be done with the weeder. That can be done with the weeder. So it's looking good. Medium weeds needs a hoe. Okay. That one. Is it? Again, medium weeds needs a hoe. That. Is it? Small weeds needs a weeder. So I could do that field with a weeder. And then I can probably do all of these with a weeder too. Yeah, all the cornfields need a weeder. So since that's where we're sitting at the moment, that's full. Let's go find this guy. Okay. I'm going to have to send you back to the main farm, I think. We've got the cotton harvester over here. Yes. So I'm going to send this guy, whoops, wrong, down to the main farm. And I am going to take a very brief break, and I will be back shortly. You can follow this guy down to our main farm, and I will be back in a moment. Okay, and here we are back again. So, tractor made it. Let's go. In fact, this and the New Holland look like they have the big tyres. That thing over there is the weeder. So, get that hooked on the back of this. Then we'll go weed up the fields that are on the main road while I spray the field over by the sheep shed. Doggy, get out the road. Alrighty. So we'll stick this in here. And we'll let him loose. Eeny, meeny, miny. Oh. You're doing your thing. Back to the sprayer. And we now have a full tank of stuff, so let's go put this stuff on the ground. Alrighty. I should put